Bugloss. Bugloss? I say bugloss. There are so many names for this perennial. Sea heart, Siberian bugloss is a big one. Heart leaf, false forget-me-not, you'll see why. This puppy likes zones 3 to 8. It's a really nice low growing zone. If you live in a cooler zone, I'm a 3B now, so good fit for my yard. Glad it's there. Bugloss is in the borage family, Boraginaceae. The borage family is enormous. Some other plants in this family you might know: lungwort, comfrey, and the infamous borage weed. If you've never eaten a borage flower or grown one, do both. They are so delicately delicious and they attract pollinators like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, I digress. Bugloss. A great thing to know before you plant a bugloss perennial is it really prefers partial shade to shade, and it really likes moisture. So I have my plant in an east-facing area right by a fence, so it gets that nice soft morning sun, no intense afternoon sun. The leaves can even burn if it gets too much sun, so be aware of that when you're planting. Soil-wise, of course the recommendation is to always have a rich, well-draining soil for the most part. That's what anyone would say, but I'm going to say this about bugloss. It's really tolerant. Even if you have clay-heavy soil, it will be okay because it doesn't mind that moisture that's held there. If you've been having trouble with your plants and you think that maybe it's the soil and you don't want to buy a soil test, well, maybe you should grow bugloss. Just make sure the soil is moist enough for this plant. Likes it moist and cool. I wouldn't really recommend planting above zones 8 though. If you live in like a really warm climate, this is probably not the one for you. Siberian bugloss has rhizomous roots. Time for a close-up. Here's a close-up of this rhizome. Unfortunately, I broke it when I was digging out this clump in the rain because I don't want to disturb the plant too much. I didn't want to actually do clump division, which is kind of the best way to propagate this perennial. But I did want to show you the root system. So here's these stolons coming out. This is how it spreads. Something to note about bugloss, it is, despite its rhizomous roots, it is actually a very slow growing perennial. So if you're ever worried about extreme spreading and you don't want to deal with a lot of that, it's a pretty slow growing plant. It can spread up to 30 inches, but it won't get higher than 30 centimeters. It's kind of a nice contained option. We move up the stem, we get to the fantastic foliage, which I probably have the most to say about. Bugloss have these heart-shaped leaves, or cordate leaves is the proper term, and this cultivar particularly is called Jack Frost. So it has this dark green veining and then sort of a silvery sheen over top, or for us, hence the name. It's probably the most popular cultivar you'll find out there. And actually, if you're ever on the hunt for shade plants, this is a good tip. I think I say this in one other video, but if you see a lot of silver on the foliage, chances are that plant is going to be tolerant to shade or a shade lover. So be on the lookout for silver if you're looking for shade. Apparently, the word bugloss is Greek for a couple words, loosely translating to ox tongue. So I guess like this rough texture is like an ox tongue. So probably don't ever want to be licked by an ox. It's not that nice. Eee! Listen, can you hear this? It's like kind of fuzzy, but also kind of prickly. Fuzzy meets prickly. This texture is often what makes plants resistant to pests. Particularly, Siberian bugloss is really resistant to deer and slugs, actually. I have a huge problem with slugs this year in this new garden I'm in, and it hasn't touched the bugloss at all. And, you know, other shade plants like hostas, those can really get attacked by slugs and or deer, so this might be a great option for you if you're worried about stuff like that. Texture defense. I have these tiny little already wilting flowers here that I picked a few hours ago. If someone simply showed me this flower, I would think, oh, a forget-me-not, cute. And that's why the false forget-me-not name I mentioned earlier. As you can see, these flowers look so much like a forget-me-not. About a centimeter in diameter, and they bloom heavily in the spring in these sprays, they're called. Just kind of come out of the plant. Very delicate. I don't know why this plant graced me with a flower stalk in September, but what luck. Maybe it was just eager to introduce itself to me. Aw, it's not all about you, Jacqueline. Once the flowers fade, aesthetically inclined people tend to cut the stalks all the way down at the base just to bring big focus to the actual foliage. If you want to prune this perennial, definitely do it in the springtime. It's not that nice to do it in the winter because the foliage actually protects like the crown, base of this plant right at ground level. It's nice to have some dense foliage keeping that little center warm and snug. Clump division is the best way to propagate Siberian bugloss. Some people claim that it's a short-lived perennial, so you get 2, 3, maybe 4 years out of it and then it decides to die. Some perennials are like that. I don't know. I don't have personal experience in that regard. Time will tell. People do recommend doing clump division regularly just so that you're actively spreading the plant, and then if one clump dies, you got more. With rhizomous roots, you just dig up that plant and then you kind of pull apart sections. Even though I did a bit of a hack job on this, if it was the springtime, I could probably plant it and I bet you I'd make it. I bet you. You can propagate from seed. Pick them when they're starting to dry. Let them finish drying in a brown paper bag. Just make sure that there's enough air in there so that they don't mold. They're tiny, tiny seeds. And then you'll get a bunch of little teeny tiny seeds you can spread. But if you have a certain cultivar that you want to propagate and you don't want it to be any different, don't save the seeds, because the seeds will not guarantee the same cultivar the following season. If you have this Jack Frost variety and you want that frosty covering and the dark veining, you might just get regular green leaves. That's the way it goes. Some people might not want that. Those people should do clump division. Have I said plant this in your shade garden? Plant this in your shade garden. It adds such a nice texture and color to a lot of different shade plants. Plant it next to coral bells with the purple and the silvery green. Ooh, nice combo. In summation, you should probably spend a large amount of your spare time just staring at this plant. Like closely. Like really closely. Better than screens. This is the real world, people. She says, posting a YouTube video. Hey, thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you want to watch more plant videos like this.